It was like my whole life flashed when you said that because I was not aware of that.
Welcome to another episode of Healing in Harmony. My name is Monica, and I am here with one of my best friends, Sarah. And today we want to talk about just our experience with kind of unmasking and coming into like a more authenticity with, I'll speak from myself. I think it relates to you too, Sarah, of just coming into more authenticity with myself and like weeding through all the programming and bullshit that's covered that up.
Hmm.
So I'm excited to chat about this today.
Me too. Really excited. It's been something that's been super prominent for me in the last like year. So, and I feel like I'm seeing more of that too. Like other people on social media or just conversations I have with people, they can relate more and more to this like recognizing that maybe the way they thought they were, how they saw themselves was not actually their real selves at all. So I think it's cool that people are like waking up to this more and more.
Yeah, absolutely. I heard, I mean, like before we were started recording, we are talking about how like it's you were saying you're like, yeah, I think it's like everyone. It's not just like autistic, neurodivergent, although that is like a common thing that's coming up more of like for neurodivergent people, but like it's everyone. And then for me to add on to that, like I think I shared with you already, oh gosh, it was the specific interview that I was watching and I can't remember specifically. If I remember, I'll put it in the notes, but where they were talking about how like autistic people specifically are here to be like the you used the word barometer, I used like thermometer, whatever,
Mm,
like I don't
yeah.
know, but like just that like or not even autistic, but the way that it was presented in the show was autistic, but like sensitive people are here to like actually be like, hey, like this isn't okay and this
Yeah, like
actually
what's
isn't
going on?
okay for anyone, but like we're the ones that it isn't okay for the most, and like what is going on, something needs to change here.
Yeah.
And yeah, so so much.
Well, I feel the other thing that came to my mind as we're like talking about this and you're sharing about just like society and yeah, this the programming and things picked up and when I don't know if it's I think there's some organizations that still sort of practice this, which I'm hoping that as awareness about neurodivergence comes out like more and more that it changes, but especially like when I was a kid, because I am very late diagnosed. It was like a couple of years ago, maybe like 3 years ago at most. But when I was a kid and there was like really no understanding about being on the spectrum and autism was just like this like just like everything else was like in this box. It's like if you're nonverbal, if you're, you know, need, higher function, like higher
Their support.
level of care and stuff
Yeah.
like that's. And then there was also the other term, which they don't use anymore for very good reason, but like it was autism or Asperger's. There wasn't like this variation of different things and different levels of what that looks like. And the entire point of helping someone like recover or heal or whatever from being neurodivergent was to teach them essentially how to mask. So
Mm.
it's
Yeah.
not a it's not about like okay, what are your special interests, what are your strengths, what are your just like anybody else, what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, how can we support all these things and foster all these things for you. It was okay, so you're super into like let's say insects, right? Like obsessed. You have like a insect pet wall in your room and all you talk about is insects, right? I'm taking this from a show that I watched about the sun was
I'm
on the
just like,
outside.
but no judgment.
For me, but like that, it could be that. It could be for me, it's been like it was makeup. Like I was
Mm.
just obsessed with like creating and doing makeup and
Oh, I
and all
didn't know
that.
that
So,
about you.
and that's why I have like way too much makeup to justify having that much makeup for someone who's like not a makeup artist. But anywho,
And now it's art supplies.
yeah, exactly. It went from makeup to markers and art supplies. So like let's say that's they would instead of supporting that and fostering that and be like, "Oh, tell me more about the insects," or like whatever. It was like, "Okay, well, let's teach you how to dialogue so you talk about this less. So let's teach you
Yeah.
like normal society way we communicate and avoid this topic." So you're already telling this person it's not okay who and how they are. You should hide that. And not only should you hide it, but here's the right way of doing things. And you're taught super early to just self-abandon and
Yeah.
not second guess what anyone's telling you and to ignore all of your own instincts and intuition. And so I think that's where the unmasking term comes from because it was now it is more, I think more people are doing like, okay, here's the way this person is wired and how do we help them navigate the world in their way that's supportive and that doesn't hinder progress, and they can do all the things they want to do, not even necessarily what other people do, but what they want to do and be successful in that rather than hide all these things and here's what you do instead. And so
Hmm.
I think that's where the unmasking and the neurodivergent community really comes from. But like we all pick up stuff in our childhood from our families, from our friends. Like we're just little sponges, when we're younger, just like picking up and
Yeah.
trying things on. And I don't think it's until later in life, whether you're neurodivergent or not, that you stop to think like, wait, what of this is me and what of this is like
Yeah.
that I've mirrored or learned or adapted. And yeah, it's like this is what we were talking about earlier, like how people we used to call it like a midlife crisis,
Hmm.
but now it's like a quarter life crisis.
Hmm. Yeah, we were saying like, or like I think that people who have midlife crises are ones who like avoid doing any healing work and then they're just like, oh my God, and they break in midlife. But I
Hmm.
think that people who like, I mean, at least for me, and it seems like you too, like we went through and then we're like in our 20s and then we're like, oh my God, I am not okay. I have to do this
Yeah.
healing work now. Then it's like quarter life crisis. And then
Yeah,
hopefully we avoid having such a big one later. I mean, growth is always happening in life, but
for sure.
and I mean, as you're sharing, my brain works by me taking notes. So you already know,
Same.
but
I
just to
have my
say, if you
little
see me,
post-it pad.
oh my God, mine is fucking ginormous.
I just have post-its, like I have these pads everywhere in my house, like in my kitchen. I have them in my car. I have them
Ugh.
by my bed.
I always, yeah, that reminds me. I mean, I always wonder like if my mom or anyone in my family was like neurodivergent because I know that can be a thing. But that reminded me, I'm like, my mom
Mm,
used to have post-it notes everywhere, and I noticed myself like doing that, but then I noticed it being overwhelming to me because then I'm just like,
mm.
which one? What's new? Like, oh my God, but like you do you, but like anyway.
No, that's
So
true.
yeah, I was like having thoughts come up while you were just sharing, and I was like, well, you're like how everyone does this to some extent, and I'm like that's also like the kind of root of like shadow work, or like Carl Jung, the like
Mm,
idea of shadow is like the parts of us in childhood that like weren't acceptable, so we like hid them away and then we identify
yeah.
with like the opposite thing of like I am putting out a video today on like if you're, oh my gosh. That if you like have fear of being seen as wrong or being seen as stupid, that you like
Mm-hmm.
had to like identify with that part of you that like knows it all. And so we'll often be in conversations where we'll like, wait, what was that they said? But we're just like, yeah, yeah, totally. Like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. Instead of being like, hey, oh, what was that? Oh, and then we actually grow and learn from it and actually feeds that shadow more. So
Yeah.
anyway, I was just like drawing that like yeah, absolutely for like for autistic or neurodivergent people, it's just like a, I don't want to say like a more intense form, but it's just like a more specific like
Mm.
more, it's just like a certain kind of form of that, but like I feel like that so relates to everyone, and like it is really about knowing. these things about yourself, like, so that you know what type of support you need. Like,
Mm-hmm.
for example, like all of these diagnoses and things were just like, sorry, but they were made up by a bunch of like white dudes in medicine, like in the DSM, and like that's why one of the reasons why I quit therapist school, because I'm just like, this isn't the way that like I want to be holding space. It was like, oh, you have to diagnose someone, you have to do this and that, and I'm like, even if it's not the best, most helpful thing anyway. So that, but then it's also like so many of these labels or things like people think like for the other thing coming to mind is the other day I had this conversation that was happening about how astrology and human design, and this person's perspective was that they don't like astrology and human design because they think it limits you, because they think you go, oh well, I'm a Capricorn
Mm.
so I can't this or that and that. And it wasn't a safe space for me to share my opinion, but I was having my opinion in my head of it's not about, oh, I'm a this, so I can't that. It's a, oh, okay, I understand this about me, and oh, that makes sense why I struggle with this, and why I have this other strength, and oh, this is how I integrate it all, and like actually learn how to support myself in the world by understanding my unique energy and my unique way of being. It's not an excuse of, oh, I'm autistic, so I can't have friends. It's,
Yeah.
oh, I need to like find people who resonate with me or find people who whatever. And like actually, for me at least, made me feel less wrong, less crazy, less whatever self-judgment, because it was like, oh my God, this is a thing. And I write about this in my book too, of just having that realization around being like an empathic person and being like, oh
Mm-hmm.
my God, this is like a thing. Okay, thank you. That gives me some sort of like way to understand this better.
Yeah.
And that was a lot. But then I also had the question I wrote down, if you're open to talking about it, you mentioned like you got diagnosed. And so I was like, oh, I wasn't, I don't remember if we talked about that you got an official diagnosis. I haven't, and I don't think I will pursue it. I don't feel like I need to, but everyone is different. And I know that you brought a lovely book to share with us as well, and that author talks about it. So yeah, however much you
Yeah.
want to share or not is totally fine.
Yeah. Well, okay, so there's so much in what you said, so much
I
good
just said
stuff.
so much. Yeah, I
No,
talked
but
for a
I
while.
love it,
Sorry.
and this is why like I took all my little notes too.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, just before I answer that question, to touch on what you said, I think I resonate a lot with that, and 100% agree that when you find something out and you're like, oh my God, this like, explains my whole life, basically. And it makes you feel like less alone, less crazy, less like other. And I took this somatic course, and she constantly emphasized like that anything shared in here is not like a how to or a
Mm.
like there's something wrong that like you need to fix. It's all about educating so like it makes you make more sense to yourself. And
Mm.
that's like how I feel about, because I know a lot of people get hung up on labels. And I remember, I forget who it was I was talking to, but I was talking to a friend when I first realized like, oh, I'm definitely autistic and definitely on the spectrum. And I remember one of them asking me, well, is that helpful? Like, do you feel like, how do you feel about having or identifying with this label? And I said, oh, it's extremely helpful to me. Like, I don't feel in any way like, oh, this is what explains me, and that means it's like the end of my life. It was the opposite. It was like all that stuff that that you're talking about and that I was mentioning, like it helps make me make more sense. It's super validating. And then the moment I found that out, I didn't know how it was all going to look, but the moment I found that out, it completely changed. You know, it was a years long process of basically every situation I found myself in. what is a new way that I can
Mm.
like approach this that supports me now knowing I'm autistic
Mm-hmm.
rather than before when I was younger and didn't have the awareness or like knew there was always something different about myself but didn't know what it was or what to call
Yeah.
it. Like you said, it's not an excuse, but like I've been able to say like to my husband, for example, like we'll be having a conversation and he loves to say, "Well, it's obvious." And I have said many times, what, not only what is obvious to you may not be obvious to others. That's just like in general. But I have been able to say, listen, I'm neurodivergent. It may not be obvious to me. And I take things super literal. So unless you
Yeah.
tell me, bum, 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 I might, like, unless you get really deep into it, I might take it another way or I might not process it the same way. And so the little nuances of like what's unsaid
Mm-hmm.
may not be apparent to me. And so, I mean, obviously, we can also get in the conversation of like nobody should be a mind reader, but at the base level of like what we're talking about, it's like I'm I'm wired differently. So what is obvious to you and you think is like something that doesn't need to be a part of the conversation, like it I need more
Yeah.
directness, like I need that. And so it's helped me like in relationships and communicating with other people and just like saying, hey, this is like something about me that's maybe different to you, and how can we like communicate better together? So again, not an excuse, but it's like another tool, just knowing this about yourself.
Yeah.
I also think as I think it's important to note that as things change and shift in like how people view different diagnosis and labels and stuff, that like I think before it was sort of like a death sentence, and now because like the perspectives are changing, it's I think it's more supportive to be diagnosed most of the time. But I also respect that there's people who don't like that and they do feel like it limits them, and like we're all entitled to feel how we feel about it. It was the same way I felt when I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia. Like doctors still ask me about it and I tell them now, I said I was diagnosed when I was 15. I said, but I don't believe in it. I said, so you can call it basically it's a kitchen sink diagnosis. It's like we've tested you for all the things, nothing fits. So it's this is the last one. And so I know a lot of people who like live in that and really are just like this explains it for me. This is the thing like, and there's no cure and blah blah blah. And I'm not here to tell anyone wrong, but I never really identified with the diagnosis of fibromyalgia. I don't believe in it. I believe the symptoms. I
Mm-hmm.
believe because I was in chronic, I had
Mm-hmm.
chronic illness, 1,000%. So I would prefer to call it that. I have recovered from that, and that's a whole nother podcast episode. But
Yeah.
so it's like you said, everything's made up. They're just words. Like it's all made up. They're just words. I kind of feel like it's like with other things, it's like what fits and resonates, take that. If it doesn't, leave it. And everyone has their, entitled to their opinion and how they feel about it. But I feel that they can actually be super helpful. And that's why I just use neurodivergent because I don't really care what you call
Mm-hmm.
it. Like when I found out about that, I was like, I know is the it's the first thing. It was like empath, yes. Highly sensitive, yes, check. But then when I read up on this and learned about it and then took like the online tests and stuff, I was just like 100%. Like I've never felt something more deep like in my soul and in my bones than
Yeah.
I am neurodivergent. Like that at the foundation, that for me is what explains everything. And again, you
Mm-hmm.
can call it something else, but that is it for me. And I like quickly talk about the diagnosis question. So I am mostly self-diagnosed,
I'm with you. I'm
but
just plugging in my computer. Sorry.
no, it's fine. I'm mostly self-diagnosed, but when I was going through that process, I was an EMDR, and my therapist like
Mhm.
confirmed and was like, yeah, that diagnosis fits you. I believe.
Was she able to actually diagnose you? I heard that you have to like it's this whole thing and you can't see most therapists.
It's a whole thing. Mostly it's through like Western medical doctors, which I think is ridiculous. Autism is in the DSM, so that's funny that it can't, like, therapists aren't taken seriously
Agreed.
about it.
Yeah.
There's this like one way of diagnosing, and it's basically stemmed off children. Everything is
Yeah.
based off kids. So as an adult, it's going to look really different how you come to this conclusion. So for a child, right, not every child is going to be in therapy. So I guess it makes sense to start with your Western medical doctor because all kids have a pediatrician. So it's and they talk, so I guess now's a good time to talk,
Yeah, I'm
which I
like
don't know
I
if you
think
can
I
see it.
just got to that part in the book.
It's so
Yeah.
bright and it's maybe background like backwards, but yeah, Unmasking Autism by Devon Price. And I feel like basically it's talked about in here where it's like there's been this stereotypical way of diagnosing, and that especially for late diagnosed adults, it's not gonna like you said, I don't think there's value in me going to a doctor or going to a specialist and sitting down. Most of the time, you'd be sitting down in literally a kindergartner sized chair while they ask you juvenile questions because it's all geared towards children, which is good now because they can like catch on
Mhm.
earlier and support their kids, but for adults this is like not helpful. And Devin talks about in the book how we need to really make room and space and honor self-diagnosis
Yeah.
because he basically says like there's no way that anyone who's not neurodivergent is going to read the signs and symptoms and be like, "Oh, that's me," if it's not. Like
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
either fits or it doesn't,
It's not
and
like
you
you like
know.
wanna be if you're not and you're yeah.
So it's like,
I feel like that just stems from like society being like, what are you like seeking attention? And you're like,
yeah.
why would I do it that way if I was?
No, exactly. Yeah, I think it's more common for adults to be like more self-diagnosed, but
Hmm.
there is that again, I don't know if it's stand up and like with a doctor, but that online test, it's the RADS test,
Yeah, I think you
specifically
sent that
for
one.
adults, but also addresses questions all the way back from childhood. So
Mm,
it kind of covers everything. And then what I liked about that one is we'll give you like there's what like three or four categories of neurodivergent. One's like social, one's like sensory. So it breaks down a percentage of like what you actually are. Like, are you more
yeah.
neurodivergent sensory wise, or is it more that you struggle socially? I mean, newsflash for me, like spoiler alert, which is probably not shocking to you, but mine was sensory and social.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I forget the other categories, but it's a really cool. I'll try to find it and we can link it
Yeah, I was gonna
because it's really
ask.
helpful.
Yeah. No, I think that you I feel like when you came over what like a year ago, however long that ago that was, and you first had that book.
It was
Okay.
like a year ago. It was like
I'm like,
February.
also, didn't you say you got that book from the library? Like, that's a cool library. They just let you have a
No,
book
okay, so
forever.
I know I did have it from the library. I had it for a really long time though. I had it for probably 8 months. And they finally were like, someone's requesting this book. We need
Yeah,
it back.
yeah.
So they actually, it is a cool library. They don't have any, like deadlines of when to turn it in.
Oh,
And
nice.
it's only that if someone's
Yeah.
requesting it, like you can keep it as long as you want, but if someone it like goes in their system and says, "Hey, I want to read this," then they want you to bring it back, especially if you've had it for more than, like a month.
Yeah. Oh,
But yeah,
that's
there's
really
no like
cool.
late fees. It's all like paid for by the city, and so they don't. Yeah, it's
That's
really
awesome.
flexible and cool. But so I bought it. I
Okay,
turned
yeah.
it in and then I bought it.
Like an aside from this conversation that doesn't really matter, but my brain was like, wait, what?
No, it was. I had it for a really like almost a year. I know. I was
But
surprised too. I even called them up one day after like I was like, "Do I need to bring this back or can I keep reading it?" And they're like, "Yeah, as long as someone doesn't request it, keep it." I was like,
that's so
"Cool."
nice. That's so nice. Honestly, that's really nice. I wish our library here did that.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I feel like so my point with that was yeah, when you first came over and you had that book from the library, then I remember you talking about like that the self-assessment and the different categories, and I'm certain that at that time I took it and I feel like I mean, and just like intuitively, I'm definitely very like sensory and social. I don't know what the other categories are, but like that definitely resonates. And it's interesting how I've also like as I've kind of realized this about myself about like oh I'm neurodivergent, I resonate with like autism like and I've taken so many self-assessments like it kind of I think you kind of planted it unintentionally or intentionally either way planted it in my awareness like at that time and I was like yeah like I know I resonate with this but like for whatever reason I just wasn't going deeper into it. It didn't feel pulled deeper into it and then now that it's kind of come back around for me and I believe that things come up and come back around when
Hmm.
like our system knows like it's time
Yeah.
okay um, so then now that this came back around for me, I was doing like so many more self-assessments and so many more different things. And I was just like, after like three or four self-assessments, I was like, so you
Okay.
just don't trust yourself in like thinking this, and this is really about what it is. And I feel like so many people, especially like our Western system, is just like, oh, you have to have like a doctor tell you that that's what it is,
Hmm.
and then it's valid. And just kind of realizing, like, oh, like, yeah, I don't need to have someone else tell me this is true. I know this is true about myself, and I can just like practice that self trust in that.
Yeah.
And I think, they talk about it in that book in a really beautiful way as well. And it also really hit me on I'm curious about all the categories, but even just the sensory and social. When this was all processing for me, I was also just like, wow, there's so much overlap with the terms of being an empath, with a highly sensitive person, with being intuitive, being whatever, with trauma. There's so many overlaps in the symptoms, experiences of those things that then in those self-doubt moments I was like, "Oh, well is this or is it just trauma and being a highly sensitive person and I'm thinking that it's this." I'm
Yeah.
like, "I don't want it to be this. I don't
Right.
care. I'm neutral on this. It is or it isn't. It's not like I'm trying to reach for it to be that." So I kind of just really had that process with it, but then yeah, I was really like processing how there's so much overlap in those things and I had recently discovered this woman's work who I'll link as well. Let me make a note of it here so I don't forget to give her credit, but who was talking about my she uses a lot of terms and scientific clinical things that are a little hard for me to always understand, but
Hmm.
so I'm hoping that I'm understanding this correctly, but the kind of gist of what I got from it was that like there is a certain overlap to some degree, maybe not wholly, totally, but there is an overlap in her research between people growing up in stressful, traumatic childhood situations, and whereas most people's brains, body, everything is like growing in a certain way, then that experience kind of causes I think in this respect, she was referring it to as neurodivergent people. They kind of take this different, like survival based process where then their brain and their
Hmm.
system calibrates a very different way. And so, yeah, just so much there. I'll stop there. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely when you were talking about that with the based on like the environment you grow up in and stuff like that. Also one thing that I probably heard before but like really learned and sunk in when I was in residential treatment was they talked about how because people like to compare trauma, and it's like someone might feel like, oh, my trauma's not as bad as theirs or whatever. And they were like, research has shown that trauma is not like the thing that happened to you is not what creates these issues. It's the lack of having a support system to help you move through it and like have like coping tools and things like that. So I
Yeah.
feel like that is very much related, at least for me, with the neurodivergent thing, because I'm also now remembering too that this goes back to like whatever you want to call it. I was diagnosed with, they called it back then, sensory processing disorder.
Mm-hmm.
So that is what you would refer to as probably like a highly sensitive person, an empath. They don't call it, they don't like to use the word disorder anymore. So that's not like a diagnosis that's typically like given currently. But if it was, like, SPD would be on the neurodivergent spectrum. So I was I was diagnosed as a child, and it was one of those things too where with just like with fibromyalgia when I was 15. So it's like, yeah, your kid has like sensory processing disorder and ADD, and the only thing we know that could be helpful is maybe medication. And then that's kind of it. Like, we can just give you the name of it, and there's not really a lot of information. So, like, good luck. And then it
Mm-hmm.
was the same with fibromyalgia. It was like, you have fibromyalgia. Well, what can you do about it? There's no cure. We don't know. Like, just have to find ways to manage it, with lifestyle changes. And it was like, okay. So, yeah, I bring that up because I think in my story, the way that I became how I am and my like wiring in my system, I believe is 100% a result of childhood and trauma and the way that I grew up, but also things that happen in utero for me, which
Mm-hmm.
also could be like a whole nother podcast episode. So I
Mm-hmm.
believe, everyone has a different belief of like how autism and being neurodivergent happens. Some people think like you're just born that way, and then other people, like even Teal Swan talks about how like being an empath is like a trauma response. And so like maybe you weren't born sensitive, but then it becomes this as a survival mechanism, and it could be one or the other. It could be both. For me, I felt like it was both. And without getting like too into the story, but yeah, there was like things in utero that happened when my mom was pregnant with me, both personally and medically, that affected my nervous system, I feel, before I was even born. And then
Yeah,
it
definitely.
just continued in various ways as I was like growing older, and things I endured in childhood. That's why I don't believe in fibromyalgia, because I feel like my chronic illness was a side effect of all of that stuff, and it makes sense. Like,
Yeah.
how could I be healthy and well and full of energy given what just my physical body, let alone the emotional stress and psychological abuse? Like, how could I be like a functioning healthy human? Like, it'd be weird if I was. Like I
Oh,
am now, but
absolutely.
it'd be weird if I didn't. Our body shows those physical
Yeah.
signs. So I mean, I feel like, yeah, 100% I relate to that. And then also, if you want to know, I have the four things.
Oh,
So the
sure.
testing is language, social, sensory, and interests. So
All
that
of
it will like
them.
give you a different like percentage or score in those areas, so you can even see sort of like how those all four of those categories like apply to you, which I think is
Cool. I'm gonna have to
really
go
cool.
back and retake that just out of
Yeah.
curiosity. All of those, like, and we'll link that below for
Oh
anyone
yeah, I'll send you
listening
the
and
link.
curious. But yeah, no, all of those make sense to me, like off just intuitively, like, okay, so social, like how you interact with others is different. Sensory, how you like, I cannot wear jeans. I go into rage.
Dude,
Like, oh my God,
I couldn't
sensory.
Jeans and clothing for me are like the food thing we talked about.
Yeah.
So there's safe clothes and then not safe. Like jeans, I could not wear jeans. And then all of a sudden in high school, all I wanted to wear was jeans.
Mm.
And then same thing, I've gone through a period now where I'm like, I don't like jeans unless they're like super baggy. I cannot
Hmm.
wear jeans. So I have like that one pair that I made recently, and that's like the only pair of jeans I can wear.
My God, well, I'm glad that
It's
we
so
can relate
funny.
'cause, like sometimes it's really gnarly, and
Uh,
that's why I'm always my little fuzzy
hmm.
sweaters. And then interests, that makes sense, like just things that we have interest in. What like my point in listing all of these is that like the language one isn't intuitively like clear to me. Is that
Mm.
we like process language differently or use
If I
language differently?
remember correctly, well, that one would be probably most prominent in like someone who's maybe nonverbal or can't
Uh,
communicate as much. But also, I think it's mainly around communication, like how we communicate. If we are verbal, like how do we communicate?
yeah, interesting. Yeah, yeah, yeah. My brain is like trying to kind of separate that from social and that they're
Mm,
connected. They're not separate, even though they're separate categories under this
I think they're
framework.
all, I mean, yeah, it's all like
Yeah,
sensory and social are so connected for
yeah.
me, right? Like, and then
Oh,
the
yeah.
social and the interests are connected, like how, like, you know?
Absolutely, yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, other things I was writing down, and then I'd love to like get into maybe sharing more of like our stories. I know that we wanted to share that as well. But some stuff I thought was really important to share of when you're speaking, I jotted down that like in therapist school, I refer to it as therapist school. It's like marriage and family therapy
Yeah.
program, masters. That's the program I was in. I just call it therapist school. So in that uh we're taught, and I believe that this is a very like broadly taught thing, and I think there's really wonderful reasons for that. We're taught to give the less stigmatizing diagnosis.
What?
So even if some, and the reason for that is if I come in and I'm
Wow.
presenting both PTSD symptoms and borderline personality, for example, symptoms, then borderline is a lot more, right? When you go out into the world,
Yeah.
people think of that a
Like, oh,
lot differently
ADHD.
than they
Yeah.
think about PTSD. And so we're taught to, okay, well, we have to give some sort of a diagnosis, so give the less stigmatizing one. And it's meant as a protective mechanism, right? But yeah, I'm with you on your emotions here because the flip side of that is then it's like, okay, so I was diagnosed with PTSD because that was less stigmatizing, and then all of these other things are missed and overlooked. And I don't blame my therapist. They were doing what they were taught, what they thought was right. But then it also has now led me back to like, there's this other stuff going on. I still have some PTSD that I'm still dealing
Yeah.
with regularly. I will like say that, but I have healed a lot of it, like so much of it. And I'm like, okay, like there's something else going on here.
Yeah.
So I'll just before I say the other points, I know you have a lot to say about that. I can tell.
Well, not only for myself am I thinking back, like it was like my whole life flashed when you said that because I was not aware of that. The only thing that I'm aware of in the diagnosing world is that with the experience with my son, which is this is where my reaction was really about, is I know that they don't want to diagnose before someone's 18 because they're
Mm,
like they
mm.
are still growing, they're changing. Every therapist thinks everything's a phase.
But
It's
they
not.
diagnose kids as autistic.
I know. It doesn't make any sense, Monica. Trust me. I know. Like, the amount of conversations I've had with like Cameron and my dad and other people about my experience with therapists and other professionals with my son is just wild. Like some of it should be illegal. I'm not joking. But anyways,
Yeah.
so when you're saying this and I'm thinking about the diagnosis that my son got and
Mm.
I'm over here again, not a therapist, but have done so much what do you call it? I'm blanking on the term right now. I've had a lot of education in this
Psychoeducation.
psychoeducation, yeah, when I was in treatment. They tell you about, like, we talk about dissociative disorder, we talk about borderline, we talk about all the stuff, whether it applies to you or not. We have groups, like in-depth groups explaining all of this stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
I got the education that a therapist gets in school. I just am not credited, basically. And that's what they tell you. And they're like, you will
Mm-hmm.
probably know more than most therapists know when you leave here.
Mm-hmm.
So, thinking about the diagnosis that my son did receive, and then I'm like, okay, we go a step above that. I've been right this whole time.
Mm.
So my emotions are just like my mind is being
Okay, I'm
blown
with you. Yeah.
because I'm like, wow, like they gave me the less stigmatizing
Yeah.
diagnosis. And I've been saying for years, I feel like it's this instead, and
Mm-hmm.
nobody wants to say it out loud. And then I'm like, fuck, I've been right. Like, how dare you?
No, for sure. Like, I don't know where I wrote it because it's getting crazy over here, but oh yeah.
It's getting crazy.
I don't even use my page well. Like, look at this. Oh my God.
Dude, my post it was the same way. I would like have one up in the corner over here. Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, yeah, no, that's that I
Wow.
wrote as well, just like sensory processing versus autism. I'm like, so yeah, they gave you that was what got me
Right.
to that thought was they gave you the more acceptable diagnosis
Yeah.
because yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
more acceptable
Right.
diagnosis. Yeah.
Yeah, because if they probably would have been told that I was autistic, my parents would have been like, "Oh my God, her life is over. She's never going to go to college. She's never gonna." I did all those things, by the way, and I got straight
Yeah.
A's the whole time. I
Yeah.
mean, also that was from masking, but I did it.
Yeah. Yep.
To tie
Oh
this back
yeah.
in, I was masking big time, but I did
And
it.
that's probably part of why then the fibromyalgia and the
Hmm.
autoimmune and eczema I've been struggling with and these things because
Yep.
our body inside is like, no, and external is like, yes, you have to.
Yep.
And we really struggle to survive in that system.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's not a coincidence that my first hospitalization was like very shortly after I graduated from college. Because I had just ran myself into the ground. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, no, that makes total sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I
Um,
get into treatment and I'm like learning all these even more about myself and I'm just like, okay, I'm not saying that I'm perfect. Like I have problems. I've done bad things. We all have. Like I'm not a perfect person, but I was in treatment being like, "Oh, I'm not the problem." Like the problem is like all this other stuff and I've been trying to fit myself in there
right.
and I just don't fit, nor do I want to anymore. Like I don't fucking want to. That's like ugh,
Yeah.
ick.
Oh,
No,
for
thank you.
sure. Yeah, and the last piece that I kind of made a note about was that let me make sense of my scribblings here. Um, so oh, what you mentioned about Teal Swan and how she talks about like empath being a trauma response, and I
Mm-hmm.
write about that in my book as well about kind of my opinion on this in that I believe I personally believe in my experience is that it is both nature and nurture. It is both
Yeah.
I am a sensitive kind of natured soul coming into this life and then I was in this nurtured this in this environment that um right? It's like if I was in an environment where that was seen as a gift and I
Hmm.
wasn't around like trauma or stress or things, then that would have developed very differently than it being kind of in a stressful environment where then those things develop into survival responses of
Yeah.
hypervigilance and being way more attuned to someone else than you are to yourself and all of these things that then go on to get us in situations where we find ourselves unable to have boundaries, unable to protect ourselves, right? Because we've kind of been brought up into being programmed this way. And instead of the conversation, which I'm trying to bring the conversation always to this. I'm sure there's others out there, but I feel like it's rare. Instead of the conversation being that grounded, yeah, it was trauma, and how do we meet this person in, wow, that was like a hard experience. You were a victim,
Yeah.
And okay, like how do we bring boundaries? How do we bring self-love? And how do we bring compassion and healing to those developmental traumas that, right, developmental trauma, it stunted your normal development.
Yeah.
Whereas the main kind of or at least just in the negative echo chamber of social media, a lot of the comments on when I've tried to talk about this stuff, or when I see Teal Swan like talk about or share workshop videos of this stuff, is like really shaming and blaming. Oh, it's you just are this victim and you need to learn how to, why would you let yourself be in that situation? And oh, you need to learn how. I got this a lot when I was trying to heal, especially in the very beginning of like, you struggle so much with relationships because you need to love yourself. And it was said
Yeah.
in this very shaming way. And I'm like, bitch, I would if I knew how. Like, that is
Right.
like telling a 2-year-old to solve this complex math problem. Like,
Right.
how is that helping me? How is shaming me helping me? We need to understand, like, all of the deeper stuff behind it. And I feel like that is a big thing. I also wrote down here, like, part of what I think a gift that I've gotten from all of this, a gift and a curse, is really seeing through what's unsaid. So,
Mm.
like, like instead of just hearing the words, feeling the energy. Like,
Yeah.
me and my boyfriend were on a walk the other night, and I asked him a question, and he was like, "Sure, babe." And the way he said it, I was like,
You're
"So,
like, no. So no.
no, the answer is no," and that's okay. You can say
Right.
that, and like me just being like, "Don't do that." Like it's okay, and I know he's not doing it like maliciously. It's his own like stuff, and it's the way that we're conditioned.
Yeah.
But it's just part of all of this of just like just cutting through all of this shame, blame, judgment, all of this, and then just to tie it back to what I first started saying of just the stigmatizing and stuff, like how we're taught to give less stigmatizing diagnoses. I know that that's happening because they think it's protecting us,
Yeah.
but it's questionably not. And it also is asking us to bend to a sick society instead of putting the focus on changing the sick society or
Oh
the
yeah.
dysfunctional society.
Yeah. 100%. It's that it's just I don't know, it's gonna take me a little while to process that fact. Like it's gonna take me
I'm
a little
here if
while
you need to
to
talk in private
to
about it.
work it through it.
And I think that I've heard that from multiple therapists. I heard that in therapist
Yeah.
school. I'm not going to say that every therapist everywhere, but I think it's kind of an industry standard, would be my guess
Yeah,
from
I think that where maybe that doesn't apply is probably if you get to the point where I did, where you get into like residential or PHP or something, they're pretty direct about your diagnoses because like that's where you're going to like get stabilized and do the real work and you have to know what you're working with. Like I remember
Hmm.
people being upset. I won't say names or diagnosis, but I remember
Yeah.
people being upset and having conversations with people I was there with that they were like upset about a new diagnosis that they weren't aware of, or upset that they were like considering this might like we're trying to rule this out or
Hmm.
whatever.
Hmm.
And but then again, whether it was like true or not, eventually then coming around to being like, okay, well, if this is true, then, how do I reframe my life like with knowing this information? Like there was an acceptance that came afterwards. And so I think it's just doing damage to try to protect people from what's like the reality, because that's just crazy to me. Like I mean that applies in all areas of like dishonesty and all kinds of stuff. It's like especially that whole like, well, I lied to protect you. Okay. Okay. Like I call bullshit. Like you lied because you didn't want to deal with like whatever was going to come when you told me the truth, and that's kind of the same thing here. So, yeah. Wow.
Hmm. Yeah. No, absolutely. I
Interesting.
feel like that kind of, I would love to segue into, and I feel like that naturally segues into like us sharing more about our individual experiences of like realizing this about ourselves and the process of like all of that. I'll just leave it
Yeah.
at that. And I'm happy to go first, but I'd love if you'd like to, then please jump on in.
Well, one thing before we move on, I wrote a note when you were talking about
Yeah.
like trauma and it being like a lot of it in this way of like shaming and blaming and stuff and like, oh, you're a victim. And made me remember another thing that I learned when I was in treatment too, is basically like what I mentioned before, where it's the thing happens and then you have like a lack of support, or like it's not really necessarily the trauma. Like the
Yeah.
trauma, of course, like
It's not
is
what
with you.
qualifies you as having that.
Yeah, but it's like the fact that you like had to go through it alone, or the lack of support. And then the other thing that ties into this that they taught me was that especially with like I think of this being diagnosed or not diagnosed, or the getting the lesser diagnosis. The other thing that creates trauma is when you are literally like denied your reality as a child. And so,
Or as an adult.
or as an
Sorry.
adult, yeah, sure, but like I guess I mean like where it will then turn into maybe something else later on.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
like we mentioned like borderline a couple times. It's like maybe had you like make maybe as a child you had a parent or a caregiver that actually was like validating how you felt and your reality and not teaching you to self-abandon. Maybe later on it wouldn't turn into these like other host of symptoms to then you're being diagnosed with BPD. Whereas like
Yeah.
with the neurodivergent thing, it's like me being encouraged to mask and to change these things about myself to fit in better with society. I mean, that alone is a trauma because
Yeah.
no one was being supportive about me being different, and no one was trying to learn ways to help me cope better. Instead, it was just like, you're different and we need to teach you ways to like be better at doing what everybody else is doing. And that, I mean, I can't think of a bigger denying a child their reality than that. So, yeah, like again, going back to like how could I be like a healthy human? Like
Oh, for
that's
sure.
like
Oh,
I'm literally being taught to self-abandon and told that I'm crazy in subtle or not so subtle ways constantly.
oh, absolutely. I'm gonna butcher the quote, but there's some famous quote about like it's not an indicator of health to be well in a sick society.
Yeah, that hits. That goes along with too, like your I know I've heard this in different versions, but it's like you're only as strong as like your like weakest, like if you're in a group or something, you're only as strong as like your weakest member. So like you need to like look at
Hmm.
that as a whole, like
Hmm.
I don't know,
Hmm.
it just made me think of that.
Yeah, as a like collective society. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Hmm.
like if all these other people are doing well, but we've got all these other people who aren't, then are we really
Yeah.
doing that well? You know?
Right. No, instead we're like, oh, over
Yeah.
there, you suck. You're not part of this.
Figure
You're
it out.
ruining it for everyone. So, yeah, I mean, our Western world has gotten very far away from our
Yeah.
tribal, indigenous, like now more natural, all the things. Yeah.
Okay, so but you were saying sharing about like
Yeah. Jump on
the
in.
sort of unmasking journey.
Hmm.
Mm.
Yeah, whatever you
Yeah.
felt called to share about like realizing and your process, unmasking, what you did to support
Yeah.
yourself in that.
I feel like similar to what you shared, it was like little things came in to my awareness. So even when I took the RADS test and I was like, okay, this explains me and I resonate with it and I understand better. It was some of it was immediate, like, oh, okay, how do I, like I mentioned earlier, how do I approach these different scenarios in my life that are better suited for what I now know about myself? And then other things took time to really like discover and integrate. So like there was still a bunch of old patterns like and things unconsciously happening. And I don't think I was like fully ready to. I think it was like one foot in, 1 foot out kind of situation. It was like I could tell you all these ways that I was doing things different and they were super supportive now. But then there was like part of me that still wasn't. I don't know that it. I wouldn't. I was about to say I think I was like fighting it, but I don't think that was it. I think I just literally wasn't aware. I thought I was like this whole new person and had figured all these things out, which I had progressed and changed a lot and grown a lot. But I mean, personally, for me and like so many other people, it was like I had to hit a rock bottom before I was just like, enough is enough.
Mm-hmm.
And it was this last year, or like 2024, 2025, especially 2024, felt very similar to me as when I was back when I was 20 years old and I was hospitalized. It was like after the college. So, like, I was
Mm-hmm.
working two jobs. I was the only one supporting my family financially. I had a very stressful situation at home and it was unstable and chaotic. And everyone was suffering and struggling in my house. Like, it was
Yeah.
not a good environment. And it took me getting because I was doing the same thing in college. I was going to school. I was just trying to be perfect at everything and I just flatlined and it was very similar. And so that's why when I got burnt out like to that point again that I was like I've been doing some version of this for almost 30 years. Like I can't keep doing it anymore. Like I'm getting even just like emotional thinking about it. Like
Yeah.
I was in such a low place and I was already in therapy. And again, I was like, well, I've already made so much progress. Like, I've already done so much healing. Like, what more can there be? And I don't think I actually would have gone to treatment and discovered like even more bits about myself if it wasn't for the fact that I was like feeling suicidal and had
Mm-hmm.
thoughts of harming again. Because if I was able to just like work it out in therapy with my therapist and just kind of keep trying to truck along, then I think I would have probably just stayed that route. But I was in such a rock bottom in such a dire place that I was like, I'm scared and I need to do something else. And so it was, it was at that point that I was like, still, or I guess it just was revealed to me like how much I was still masking, how much I was still trying to like fit into society and work the way other people do and hustle and like be perfect and keep it all together and like whatever. I mean, I don't think I was keeping it together in a sense that like of like the keeping up with the Joneses, but I was trying to hold my little household together. So like people knew I was suffering. Like it wasn't a secret. I was
Yeah.
talking about it. I was like, I'm fucking struggling. Like I need help. But I mean keeping it together as in like this whole house just doesn't go up in flames. And so it took that something that extreme. And then when I went there and finally felt validated for the first time in my life, was getting the education that I needed about all the things.
Mm.
And people were like, no, yeah, like your childhood was fucked up and your family's super dysfunctional. Like people weren't pretending anymore that like you have everything. What's wrong with you? Like people were like,
Right.
you've been through some shit. And I was like, oh,
Right. They can see
like
the
I,
strengths and they're not going to bypass because of
right.
them. Yeah.
Right. And so it was like, yeah, for the first time, I basically lived in residential and PHP and during that time in homes and environments and with professionals that were exactly what I've needed this whole time. And maybe I got little bits and pieces of that here and there from different people, but it was like being literally like immersed in it and just like bathing in all of that support was
Mm.
like the key. And I getting away from my house was like how I was able because I was there was to focus on myself. I'd never done that before in my life.
Yeah.
And So I had the time and the space and the environment to start exploring like, well, who am I? And like uncovering like you mentioned in the very beginning of the podcast, like removing all these things that we've been programmed and we've picked up and questioning like what is me and what isn't me. And almost like 90% of it was not me. Like that sounds crazy, but I feel like I feel like my personality and my humor and who I am has is there. Like I've always like been myself in that way, but like my viewpoint on things or the things I felt I have to do or the things I felt like were valuable or important were not for me at all. I remember doing a worksheet on values and I was just like, I don't, and then it was then that I realized like, I don't even know what mine are. Like,
Mm.
if I took this worksheet a year ago, or 2 years ago, it'd be totally different than what I'm saying my values are now. And so I think it was just doing, I would think it was having the time and space to really just focus on myself and just be like really discerning and questioning like all the things. And then as a lot of that stuff started to fall away, and there was a period where I was like, "Fuck yeah, this is awesome! Like I have boundaries and I'm learning about myself." And very quickly that went to like huge grief
Yeah.
because every piece I removed like created this hole that I needed to fill with something else, and it felt super raw and scary and vulnerable. It was like all this armor that had built up for almost 40 years. I just was supposed to let it all go, and it felt really heavy and really scary, and I was uncomfortable being more vulnerable at that time. Now I'm not. Like I can get really vulnerable and not feel like at risk or
Mm.
unsafe.
Hmm.
But at the time it felt very unsafe. And so that, and then went through this grieving period of like who I thought I was. And even something as simple as like the makeup being exchanged for markers that we talked about earlier, like it sounds so silly and little, but I was like, I still have all this makeup that I'm not using. And I was like, I can't just throw it away. Like it feels like such a huge part of me and such a huge part of my history that it's like sad to just let that go. And so it was it was a it was a grieving period for like what could have been, what never was, how it was and how it is now, letting go and bringing in new things, but like being okay with the letting go. It's a lot. It's a lot and it's also like hard to I think even put into words some parts of it. But
Yeah.
once the grieving period was kind of subsiding, then came back the like, okay, this is awesome. Like I know myself, I whatever, like, and you know what, I
Mm.
don't need those things anymore. And so what are the new things? What am I going to fill those holes with? And
Yeah.
yeah, like we've talked about like creative stuff and art and things have been coming in and dancing again for me because I loved part of my trauma was I quit cheerleading when I was in high school, and
Mm.
I wouldn't say that's not part of my trauma. That was a response to my trauma was I quit
Mhm.
cheerleading, and it's like been a huge regret. And so
Mm.
a lot of the stuff I've been doing too is like honoring maybe, and this isn't maybe unmasking, but like I reverted back to like a child in dreaming.
Yeah.
I was like eating chicken nuggets for dinner and
Yeah.
like just like being a little kid. I mean, my 40th birthday's coming up and I'm having I don't think I've told you this, but I bought a bunch of Hello Kitty stuff, so it's gonna be like Hello Kitty themed. And I'm like,
I love how I sent you the thing like we should play hide and seek. And you're like,
yeah. No,
yes.
I'm literally having like a kid's dream party for my 40th birthday. And it's like the
Mm.
party I always wanted with like all my closest, most special
Oh.
people. So I'm like so excited. But it's doing things like that too, not just like learning what and how and who I am unmasked, but also like what are the things that I can honor now that I
Mm.
needed back then. That also helped with the grieving because it was like, okay, yeah, that's sad that it went that way, but like I can do that now. I can
Mm-hmm.
totally do that now. And it
Mm.
feels just as fulfilling as I feel like it would have if I was 9. Like maybe even more so because I'm like really in it. I'm not in survival mode, just sort of like experiencing it. Like I can be in it. So,
Absolutely. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Like what you were sharing. Oh, I
Yeah.
posted something about how I had a certain experience in my 20s and wasn't able to fully like take it in because of that kind
Yeah.
of gray cloud, and that's the
Yeah.
same thing I'm hearing with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, thank you for sharing all of that. I had a few things come to mind before I like jump in with mine of where do I want to start? Yeah, I think it's really powerful what you said of I don't think you said it this way, but I wrote it this way of that like education can help us understand and heal. I know for me, like
Mm-hmm.
especially after I think this started with this, but it's taken so many other routes. I've studied so many things, and it started with when I got out of like a toxic abusive relationship and realized, oh, I don't think that was like normal or healthy. What the heck was going on? And I
Mm-hmm.
dove into the rabbit hole of like studying narcissism and sociopath, psychopath, all the things. And
Yep.
then it was just like, it was so helpful and healing. And for some people, maybe they have different experiences of this, but I feel like I see that kind of being a common thing, especially with like toxic relationships or with just things that like this like certain diagnoses or experiences where we like feel crazy and we're just like what is going on, and then sorry, my dog's over here getting so snuggly and knocking down pillows.
Aw.
We're like what the heck is going on, and then actually like learning and that education can be really helpful. So it's so cool that you got that in treatment. Yeah, I've also like um I've also kind of been grappling with, I'll share more about this when I share mine, of just like how well, how your values and your opinions and certain things can be kind of programmed and overridden. And then it's
Mm,
like that's what the mask is. But then
yeah.
it's not like I've been totally 100% fake, not me the whole time.
Yeah.
But it's also like I haven't been uh, whatever the opposite is. Oh my God. And then also in like a lot of these in I'll say most, I don't know, in most, childhood trauma situations, I think developmental things get interrupted, and a big developmental thing is gaining a sense of identity separate
Yeah.
from your family, your whatever systems you're a part of, church, family, school, like society, whatever, especially family, obviously, when you're a kid. And so it just, yeah, being this kind of like struggling to find words that actually feel right, but like it's struggling to kind of just like come into your own, into like self-actualization, into like, okay, who am I? And it's kind of this like late blooming thing that happens in, okay, I was surviving all that
Mm-hmm.
time. I was just surviving, and now I can actually like you have to do the things to be able to get out of a situation that you're in a stressful house, you're in a stressful toxic situation, whatever. You can't heal in those types of environments. You can't heal in a war
Yeah.
zone, as I like to say. And then like once there's that stability, then like okay, how do I actually, then it's that process of like actually self individuating and becoming yourself, which is difficult because we grow up seeing peers who were doing that for a long
Right.
time before we were able to do that, and it feels really shitty. Um, and then the last thing I'll say here, of like, yeah, and that ties into like reverting to kind of childhood things of just like, okay, like what did I like when I was little? Oh, I liked art. I
Mm,
liked this. I liked that. Like, let me like get in touch with those things again. And like,
yeah.
it makes sense to me.
Yeah.
And then the last thing that I kind of probably visibly was like, oh, like while you were sharing,
Yeah, I saw it
Um,
at one point. I don't remember what I was sharing, but I was like
well,
something.
the makeup thing. I remember in
Ah,
the
okay.
book, in the Unmasking Autism, I'm listening to it. Some books I physically read and some books I
Yeah.
listen to, and this one I'm happening to listen to. But then the author was sharing about I'm believing I'm getting this accurate, that the author was sharing about an example where uh like a little girl kind of grows up getting really like her special interest becoming makeup because
Mm,
that's something that's socially acceptable that all the other girls around her
mm,
are like obsessed with, and she's like, I don't like, at least energetically from this I kind of could imagine or kind of could intuit or guess that she's like, I don't really get this. I'm not really into this, but it is something
mm,
I can like dive into as a special interest, and having that special interest will help me like fit in more and feel
mm.
more safe in that system.
Yeah, that's
And
interesting.
so it's really, I don't know, maybe that is totally off for your experience, but that's what that was, that it reminded me of that. And so I was curious if that relates for you at all. And
Hmm.
I don't know if I have any of those, but I'm sure I might.
Yeah. Actually, I've never thought about it in that way. 'Cause yeah, I'm trying to think like I'd have to think about that to see if I have any
Sure.
for as far as the um like makeup for me goes, I could see that for someone. That wasn't my experience like for a lot of other reasons makeup was so I would be like there's stories of me being like 5 years old and having like the little kid makeup kits that you just probably got from like Target or something. And my parents said I would just like play and like paint on my face and my body for like
Hmm.
I could do it for hours. And so as I grew up, of course, that evolved into like learning how to do like, you know, eyeshadow and all these other things. And it started young for me because it was one of my ways to escape. So I could go and that's like a special interest, right? You know, where you can like
Yeah.
really dive in for hours and just like lock in and not.
Like
It's
express
like
yourself and
yeah, and the
whatever. Yeah.
time it could feel like 20 minutes, but it's been
Yeah.
like 4 hours. Like
Yeah.
makeup has always been that for me.
Hmm.
Um,
That's awesome.
and I also like, and this was back during a time when there's no like YouTube, so I and social media, so I had no one to like learn from. So that's what I was literally, what people do now, where they sit in their rooms and they film it and they're like trying things out. That's what I was just doing naturally, like on my own. So instead of like
Mhm.
my current obsession, like alcohol ink markers or diamond art, it was makeup. But that was my like way of playing and practicing creativity. But I could totally see where it being like, especially being a woman and seeing, as you're getting older in high school and other teens are doing that, that would be
Yeah.
like a, oh, well, let me jump on that bandwagon. But no, that was like
Yeah.
from very early on for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
everyone's like experience is totally different. So
Yeah.
yeah, no, that's so cool that that's always been like an outlet. Is that
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why it was so hard for me to like, I still put on makeup. I just don't do it in the same way.
Yeah.
And I guess I
Yeah, your
don't need a
makeup is
reason
always
to,
really good.
oh,
Whenever you're like
thanks.
here doing your makeup, I'm just like, so
Thanks.
pretty. I
Self-taught.
mean, you're
Uh,
beautiful either way, but
um, yeah, I think that's why it's so hard for me to let that one go because it's
yeah.
like I have such fond memories of it, but I also realize like I don't need a reason to escape anymore. So I think that
Mm.
that's part of it too. And I found a way to, which I need to meet up with her. I found a way to like, so I don't just throw it out. I'm one of my friend's daughters like really into makeup and stuff, and so I was like, she can have my whole collection if she wants. Like I'd rather gift it to someone than to like just throw it in
Oh,
the trash. Like that's
my inner
hurts my
child
heart.
loves that because
Yeah.
my experience with makeup was like my mom didn't ever talk about it or teach me. Actually, like
Mm,
once I started learning, my mom would start asking me questions, and I was like,
how funny.
oh, just a lot. But it was always like really like, and I can have obviously like she didn't know, like I can
Yeah.
understand in a compassionate way, why that was. But anyway, my experience was like, yeah, not having that, but my aunt's mom, like, just like. whatever family. Oh my God, all the connect family
Yeah.
perfect names. I don't know, but my uncle's wife, my like married aunt, then her mom, so not my grandma, the other side, whatever. She worked at Estee Lauder at like Macy's, and they were
Nice.
like getting rid of, I think they must have been like clearing out some stuff or something. And so one year she gave me this little like cute little Estee Lauder bag with like a little like lipstick and a little blush and like things in
Oh,
it. And that was my first thing, and I was really afraid that like I wasn't going to be allowed to keep it, but like I was, and then I was just kind of overwhelmed by it and didn't know what to do with it, but I felt really
yeah.
cool having it.
That's so cute. I love that.
So I love that you had like that experience. That's so cool.
Yeah. No, that's really cute. I have memories of that too, like going to like my mom taking me to the Clinique counter and going to
Mm.
like yeah, Nordstrom's and
Hmm.
I think that was part of it too. Like the same hunt for the alcohol markers. I would be like, I'm going to Mac, I'm going to Sephora, like I'm gonna get the new eyeshadow palette. Like it was just an obsession. Like
That's so fun.
yeah, and I did makeup like professionally like a little bit, but it was not again not
Cool.
enough to warrant the amount of makeup that I have purchased in my lifetime. Like
Okay.
it's
It's all good.
crazy.
No judgment. No
Something
judgment.
that
I definitely
that
get it.
popped into my mind when you were sharing about the like survival and stuff and the
Mm.
self-actualization, like that's another thing that came up in treatment. We had a whole group on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which
Mm.
everyone was like shocked that I had not heard of that ever in my life, and I was like that, yeah, I have not heard this person's name. I don't know anything about it.
Hmm.
And that's actually the top one is
Yeah.
self-actualization. Like you need to have all your base like food, water, security, like need to feel safe in order to like get to the top of the pyramid and that's the last one. And so
Hmm.
like your sense of self and identity. And so it makes sense that for some people who have been living in survival mode, that doesn't come, it comes much later than our some of
Yeah.
our peers. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And like a little fun fact, since my special interest is healing and psychology and spirituality. But I actually learned this. I used to be the director of staff development at a crisis facility, and I was one of the things they had me teach about was Maslow's hierarchy. And
Mm.
one of the women in my trainings at one point was like, "Oh, did you hear that that's actually like reversed of what it's supposed to be?"
What?
And I was like, oh no, like that's so interesting, and like chatted with her, but then obviously we have to move on to what we're supposed to be doing. So then I like looked it up later, and my now take on it as I'm processing this, as you're sharing it, is like it makes sense for our like Western society, the way our Western society is run and like focused for it to be like food, shelter, like safety, like at the bottom before self-actualization, because it's like
Mm.
that makes total sense for how our world works, and it'll make more sense once
Yeah.
I share why the opposite, and the opposite way. So it's actually like that the pyramid is actually supposed to be flipped, and then it's actually supposed to be like
Mm.
you start with self-actualization, and that is, I wish that I could remember and give them credit, but it's some like indigenous, there's a really like, if you're ever curious or whoever's watching is curious, you could just like Google it, and there's like this really cool like woman who talks about it and how there's like indigenous roots to that, and like in a
Mm.
tribal setting where you have that social support, if your mom's not available you have everyone else around you, right? It's a
Yeah.
very different like system, and that then in that system they are actually able to start with self-actualization and like who am I, where do I stand, go on the the like soul quest or like whatever ways that it's done in
Yeah.
that society, in that culture, and then kind of from there move on to like, okay, how do I like have food and water and shelter like of my own that I can then like grow and like add to this society with. And I thought it was really interesting. Fun fact.
That does make sense to me with the way Western society is because like way before it, that's like where the whole it takes a village thing like the way we live currently is like so separate from
Yeah.
everyone and we really only yeah, it's like we have our little nuclear household and there's not a
Yeah.
whole lot outside of that. But it makes sense that yeah, you'd have these other people that could come in and help support this human grow when the way you live is more
Supportive of
supportive of
that.
that.
Yeah.
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 So that does make it because I'm I'm like, wait, how is that possible? But no, yeah, I could see it.
Yeah, and like if you're curious, like please look it up too, anyone like 'cause I could be remembering it in my own way as well, but there is definitely lots of interesting kind of research or work on this idea.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll jump
You need to share
into
your
like my
story.
experience.
Yeah.
So yeah, as I already kind of started out, I'll share that like yeah, that when you came with that book, whatever it was at least a year ago, if not more, it kind of
Yeah.
planted that seed where I was like, yeah, I think I definitely resonate with this, but like for whatever reason I wasn't diving into it fully yet. And then um basically I I've another thing I've studied a lot is like hypnosis and that kind of work and subconscious reprogramming, all of this type of stuff. And I had the idea of making I called it an identity shift hypnosis for myself. And it was basically like, okay, how do I wanted to make a like soundtrack of my own voice because our subconscious responds best to our own voice. It responds to a
Mm.
lot of things, but it like we trust ourselves. There's no do I trust that
Mm.
kind of barrier.
Right.
So I wanted to be in my own voice and like, okay, I want to be saying things about what I want to be growing into. So what do I want to be growing into? I want to feel, I can't remember. It was basically, you're, for this type of work, you want to listen to it for 28 days is generally the
Mm.
thing. And so that was, I think I started it December 1st and I'm pretty sure yeah, it ended like exactly on December 31st, and I was like, oh,
Mm.
that worked out for like New Year kind of
Yeah.
vibes, which that's a whole other thing if that
Yeah.
you believe in that or
New
not.
year, new me.
Yeah, but
Identity shift.
yeah, and like if that's the real New Year to you or
Yeah,
not.
exactly.
But anyway, so I made this track and I can't recall like the specific things, but the kinds of like generally it was kind of like I want to be more confident in speaking my truth and sharing my voice and being who I am and being authentic in the ways I connect with others and whatever, like that's the kind of general flavor.
Yeah.
And then the other main piece was I want to quit smoking weed.
Mm.
That's something that like I have been on and off with and I don't judge anyone for doing it. I'll speak just for myself that for me I know that I was using it as like as coping, as numbing for so long when I was flooded and I was frozen in trauma and
Yeah.
all of these things and I was just like it was the way that I survived. It got me through it. Like
Yeah.
I really needed it and it really helped for a long time. And then I had kind of done different cycles of wanting to quit and then struggling with that and whatnot and then just really feeling like this is the time where no, I really do want that, but for some reason my like and I worked with this woman who was talking about it and it kind of influenced me to realize that like I don't always have to listen to that part of me that is like, "Oh, go do it. Oh, you need it, whatever." But that also not to then shame myself like if I
Yeah.
do. And so anyway, all that's to say I was like at a point where I was like I know that I'm ready and I know that I want this and it's not coming from this place of me pushing it away or shaming myself or whatever. It's like I'm actually ready now.
Yeah.
And so I also kind of fed that into the hypnosis of like and I didn't even say it specifically like I want to quit weed. You will
Mm.
quit weed. I just was like I am ready to be clear and
Mm.
have clarity of my thoughts and to not have to depend on anything else to regulate me. And right, I was just like, okay,
Yeah.
what are the actual like effects of what I want to do? And so I made this hypnosis. I listened to this every night as I fell asleep for a month, I'll just round it up to. And I shit you not, at like 1 or 2 weeks in is when I had this like unmasking, I'll call it unmasking realization. And it just like hit me like a train. Like, I don't, there was something that I saw, some way that this person said this thing that just like, it was just like, boom, all of a sudden. And I just like, I'm really like clairvoyant, clair whatever, intuitive. So it just the way it showed up for me was almost just like having this inner image in my mind of all of these flashbacks of like this situation, that situation, personal, business, here, there, everything. And I'm just like overloaded with like every way that I have been like masking, been inauthentic because I was in survival and because I needed to. I really did need to be that way to get through what I got through in my life, and had a lot of like childhood trauma and stuff that initiated these protective mechanisms within me. And like you kind of said before, it's not that there's something wrong with me that these things developed. It was my system protecting me. It was like turning on these really beautiful things that I can protect myself with. And then it's just a matter of once, how do we get ourselves out of needing that protection into a safe environment? And then how do we unwind all of this shit because it's not helping anymore. It's hurting now.
Yeah.
So I just was having like all of these like flashbacks and thoughts, and it just hitting me. And there really wasn't, I'm like feeling it come up as I go to talk about it again. There really wasn't a break between that and then the grief. It just kind of all
Yeah.
hit me at once of just seeing that and then being in so much grief of everything that I've had to do, and like the grief behind why I had to do that, and the grief behind me, feeling like, well, I didn't get to have this individualized like identity development when I was a kid, and now I'm doing that work for myself now. And there was a lot of personal things, and there was a lot of, I think I had already kind of consciously and subconsciously processed some of the personal things. So there was a lot of that still, but especially this time on the like business side.
Yeah.
Um, I've been in different like business mentorships and different like containers, and I know all of those people meant well, and I know that there's certain things that I was told were the correct way to do things. There was certain things that I, being a very perceptive, read under the lines type of person, recognized, oh, she thinks that she has to show up in this, that, and way. So that must mean I
Mm.
have to also do that. And a lot of this wasn't like conscious, like
Yeah.
that I just said out loud. It's not like I literally thought that. It's just like adopted, like project,
Yeah.
like we just project it on ourselves and adopt it as our own. And so it was so much grief about seeing all of that, and then also feeling like I'm someone who I've always, ever since I was a kid, again, not to keep bringing it up, but fucking yeah, to keep bringing it up. I wrote about it in my book that, like, ever since I was a kid, like, I knew I'm gonna heal myself and I am gonna help people. And I had no reason to think that other than it just came to me, and I just knew, and I've always known. And so feeling this like weight of this mission, then also kind of like want like, and like feeling so different, it was kind of that passion driving, oh, okay, I need to pick up that belief to do it this way, I need to do it that way, I need to do it that way so that I can like do my mission of like helping people. And a lot of the grief was realizing like, oh, a lot of the like strategies, tactics, things that I've been taught are actually, and things that I was doing. I don't like that I was doing it, but I can have compassion for myself. A lot of the
Yeah.
things that I was doing was not in line with being trauma informed, as I am a trauma informed person, was not aligned with certain things that I have a lot of like integrity and like belief around, like, you know, not to like dive into it too much, but just of just certain tactics in marketing and certain ways that people teach you to position yourself. And I think one that's a good example that we talked about was the thing of like a lot of times you're taught to like gatekeep and not give people
Mm-hmm.
everything that they need. And so that you kind of keep them, oh, needing more, because it's easier to keep a client than it is to get a new one.
Yeah.
And then me and you talking about it, and it's like, that's not the purpose. The purpose that like I feel in my heart is to help someone at whatever level they need. And also being told things like, oh, you do this and that and that and that. You do soul blueprint and you do past life regression and you do trauma work, whatever. Why don't you really ought to just like put it all into one container so that you can get more money out of it, basically. And then coming back to like, whoa, no, that's actually like not like I want to meet people where they are. Not everyone needs everything. And I want to like do it in a way that is in integrity with me. And for so long, I was lost in doing things in this certain way because I thought that I honestly thought that I had to do that and I had to kind of comply and bend to these typical ways of doing things in order to succeed. And I knew in my heart that my mission was actually heart led. So okay,
Yeah.
I'll do the icky things because I know that I'm still coming from the heart.
Yeah.
And just so much grief, and so much unwinding of all of this, and just feeling like, oh, I wasted so much time and I wasted so much money and I ran around in circles, not having anything work for me, and just so much grief with that. And then kind of processing and supporting myself in that of like, okay, like, fuck, that sucks. And we have to go through things to then lead us to the next thing, to then have that contrast for us to be pushed to be able to see that. Like you said, like I had to get at rock bottom. If it hadn't been that bad, I might have just skated through and been in this unaligned state for longer, if not the rest of
Yeah.
my life.
Yeah.
And yeah, just really processing all of that and then coming back to how I actually want to be doing things, and that it doesn't have to be the way that everyone else is doing it, and that honestly if it's different than the way everyone else is doing it, that's probably a really good thing.
Yeah.
And so having compassion for myself of okay, it wasn't a outright waste of time, an outright waste of money or energy. It was all the things that led me through the frustration, through the what's it called, the rock bottom, through all of that to then like push me to this point of kind of, I think in this subconscious way, my system kind of did have that breaking point in that realization, in that kind of flashback moment of seeing all of this and being like, we can't do this anymore, and just
Yeah.
like this huge snap. And then in unwinding that and in processing that, also realizing, at least for my beliefs that I hold, is that the universe, God, source, whatever you want to say, my higher self, who, whatever, that the universe didn't want to make me successful in those unaligned ways, because then I would have continued those unaligned ways.
Yeah.
And I would have gotten, I think someone I know talks about this a lot, that they work with people who have run their business in ways that aren't really aligned, and then they reach this high level of success and are quite literally shutting down their businesses and saying, I can't do this
Yeah.
anymore. And so I really believe that if I had kind of had that breakthrough in this misaligned state, it would have led me down this other path that's obviously not the path I was meant to go down, because that's not what happened. And
Yeah.
so was able to reframe it in like, okay, I'm in the grief, I'm in all of this, and that so sucks, And I know that I had to go through this so that my system can snap back into what's actually aligned so that I can build from that stability. And it might be slower and it might look different from the outside. I might talk slower. I know my energy isn't naturally like these, like, I'm not a natural, my energy just doesn't naturally fit the kind of algorithm and stuff that a lot of social media wants of this high energy and say
Yeah.
the point right away and all of this stuff. And it's like, oh, you're going to lose people because of that. You have to do it this way. And it's like, no, no, I don't. I'm not doing that because that's actually not good for me. And you know what? The people who resonate with that are probably not like actually going to get me and like actually not going to be the right fit anyway. The people who resonate will, and they'll
Yeah.
find it, and that's great, and just trusting more. So yeah, and I know also, in that then are you comfortable with me sharing like what came with up with us?
I had wrote a note because
Yeah.
I was like, I
Or
was gonna ask you the same
I'll let
question.
you respond if you want to. Otherwise, like, yeah, which I'll share that as well.
Yeah, no, continue. I'm good with it.
Yeah, so just like in that also, in on those moments of grief and like flashbacks and just like fuck, oh my God, then my beautiful friend Sarah is like in this journey of like, I want to start doing this work helping other people. And in my heart, I was just like, yes, yes, like, heck yes, that's amazing. And you so, like, have so much to share with people. But then also, like, I was just in that moment of also other frustrations that have come up around I've wanted to do this since I was a kid. And when COVID hit, then all of a sudden everyone decided they were going to be a coach.
Yeah.
And I wanted to do that for so long before that, but I knew in that moment COVID hit, everyone's becoming a coach. I was like, I really want to do this work helping people, but I knew I wasn't ready yet, and I wasn't about to override not being ready and go out and try to do this work in a way that's probably going to be harmful to other people.
Yeah.
So, as painful as it was to watch everyone else starting to do what I wanted to do, I was just like, okay, like I'm not ready yet. I'm focusing on myself still. And so then I'm in this grief of all of remembering all of these things and then wanting it, and then you sharing how like you're stepping into this work, and it just really like being, yeah, it just like really hit my grief when I was all in it of that, and having all of these icky feelings of like, oh, like competition and jealousy and certain things that I like immediately when I felt them come up, like I think I've done enough healing work and have enough self-awareness in that moment to realize I was like, oh, this jealousy, this competition, whatever, like really be super aware that it was there, and be super aware that that wasn't actually the truth of my soul, and that wasn't
Hmm.
actually the truth of how I felt. It was just this fear and this grief and this ego
Yeah.
and all of this stuff that was in me that was processing. And I knew that you could feel something was off, but I just didn't know how to like to communicate. And so you were really sweet and like just giving me space. And then after kind of us coming back together and talking about it all, and I think it's been really helpful for me. And I don't know, that's the kind of friendships, relationships, any sort of relationship, whether it's personal, professional, romantic, friends, call working, whatever it is, like that's the kind of relationships I want to have, where we can both do our best to our best of abilities to have that awareness about ourselves and to come together and like share honestly, instead of, I know you were like it would have been okay if like you didn't explain what was going on, and maybe that's like some neurodivergent tendency in me too, to be like, no, I could feel that you felt I could feel that you felt that something was off, and I don't feel like comfortable, like I so naturally put myself in someone else's shoes, and I was like, if I was on the receiving end, I wouldn't feel safe or comfortable just moving
Yeah.
on as if nothing had happened. Like I
Yeah.
need to know what happened. I'm fine with the truth of the matter, I can sit with that. That's fine. Like, as long as it's not in like an attacking, shitty way.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
all.
as
That's all.
as you're sharing that last part, I was just like it just came into my mind of like that I feel like that's kind of what this podcast is just
Hmm.
like encompasses what this podcast like concept is all about for us. Like healing in harmony doesn't mean that we go through the same things at the same time or that we our journeys have identically mirrored each other, but I think what we just like moved through and experienced in our friendship through all of this is like exactly that. It's like, okay, I know my friend's going through something and I can feel it, but if she wanted to share, she would. And so I'm going to give her space and let her sit with whatever. And then whenever she is ready, I'm going to like receive that information and we're going to like work. Like that to me is the harmonious part about our friendship. And I think it's been that way from like the very beginning. Like when I think I shared in like the first podcast, like you were one of the first people to like be really honest and upfront with me and be like, hey, you said something that made me feel this way. And I'm sure it wasn't what you intended, but like this is what happened for me. And us just being able to like hear that from each other and receive these things from each other and not let any of this stuff get like weird or uncomfortable. And I'm like, I could see we're both getting emotional right now because it's for me, like, this is one of the most like loving friendships that I have ever experienced. And it's also like a friendship and a relationship that I like honestly didn't even know was possible.
Yeah.
And so to me it it doesn't mean that it's all sunshine and rainbows. Like it this is exactly what I feel like this podcast is about is like every relationship has these ebbs and flows and it's just like how
Hmm.
we both like respond and respect and love each other through all of those things is what's like the most beautiful thing about it and I
Hmm.
love you so much.
Hmm. Yeah, I love you too. Yeah. No, I totally agree.
Yeah. And I have so I have so many I know we're like going forever and ever here.
I don't care. Yeah, I'm happy
We could
to.
have like a three-parter or something,
That's
but
fine. Yeah.
I'm like I have so many thoughts about
Yeah,
what you
I'd love to
shared.
hear.
And
I'm
that I was gonna ask
sweating
the
over
same.
here now.
Yeah. I know after I shared I was like, my face is getting a little red. It was just like it's a lot to unpack. But yeah, I was gonna ask if you were comfortable sharing about what happened too, because
Yeah.
through all of this, like the other thing too that I realized a little bit after the fact, I think, and which is
Mm.
why I like was like, okay, I think I should just give her some space until we talk later about this because I could sense that was something was going on and I think I felt a little bit shitty afterwards. It's not
Yeah,
anything I
you
can control.
apologized. It was like,
Yeah, it's like not
hey,
anything
really
I
like,
yeah, it's like not anything
yeah.
I can control, but I was like, I'm over here being like, yeah, through your grief and through your experience, I've realized these things about what I'm doing.
Okay.
But it was actually our conversation when you were just like, hey, do you have time for a call? And just was like asking about my experience and the unmasking and all that stuff and a little bit about my story. And that was between that conversation we had and then me thinking like about how much support I had when
Mm.
I was going through it. Like not everybody is going to go into residential treatment. Not everyone's going to need that. Not everyone is capable, even if they do need it. They maybe can't afford it. They don't have insurance, whatever the case may be. And all this stuff that we're talking about like not being validated, not having support, and how that creates more trauma. And then it was like after a conversation, I was like, hey, like, I do have a lot of experience with this. And
Yeah.
I do have like things that would be helpful to share with people. And and then yeah, we'll have to do a whole episode about the coaching stuff because then I was like, I even have like my one of my things on there right now is like a coaching call, and I was like, I need to change that. Like, I don't, the whole coaching thing is icky now, but
Yeah,
I,
it's gotten
it was,
spun in interesting ways.
yeah, it was, through our conversation and through me reflecting on like, well, how did I work through it other than the specifics? It was like, well, like we talked about, you can't heal in a war zone. I got out of my environment. I finally felt safe to do so, and I had the support. I had the proper support finally. And so, since not everyone's going to have a major rock bottom or go to residential, how can I help others who are in this phase of their healing and be that support to them? And so, again, yeah, most people call it coaching, but I got to figure out some other language because I just don't want to be associated with that. I don't
Yeah.
even really view it as, it's almost like I don't really view it as coaching. I view it as like, and not in a juvenile way or like a pacifying way, but I view myself more as like I'm just kind of the person that's like walking alongside you and like holding your hand through the whole thing,
Hmm.
because that's what the support means to me. Like, nobody in treatment like told me what I should do or I have to do this or whatever. It was all just like being there to
Yeah.
listen, validate all those
Yeah.
things. And I'm like, I and then sharing experiences, and I'm like, that's, I can do that. Like, I can
Yeah.
sit there, I can hold space. And so I was like, yeah, I think if people are wanting to live more authentically and unmask, and I liked you kept saying unwinding. I like that too.
Mm. Oh, I didn't
To
even realize. Yeah.
unwind and uncover and process and all that stuff. Yeah, I just want to be like a support system for people through that. And so, but yeah, that's why I felt
Yeah.
shitty because she's over here like struggling. And I'm like,
Oh,
I'm gonna do this, and I'm posting, and I'm just like, yeah, I'm gonna, yeah. So it was
yeah.
a strange little blip in our time
Yeah.
together, but I'm glad that we like worked it out. And I feel like those are the things too that, like, as we work through, you just become more like comfortable. Like, I think it just builds even more trust. Like, I already had so much trust between us, but I feel like it has strengthened
Hmm.
that even more so.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, it's like so interesting how, yeah, kind of as you're saying it back, I'm like recalling the kind of pattern of events of it being like me being like, hey, I'm realizing all of this and like grief and all these things, and then you supporting me, and then how that kind of how you were able to support me, but then how that kind of initiated you having this realization, and then like
Yeah.
just all of it. Yeah. Yeah, and I think I mean I know that you're gonna do really like really powerful work with people. It's really not about like knowing the right answer, and like people don't unless they like ask like what should I do, like they don't want to be people we don't
Right.
want to be told what to do.
Right.
So that's like so much of it is just like how do I actually like have someone beside me who can see in the dark here a little bit,
Yeah.
and then that helps me orient to myself and like find my own answers. I think that's
Yeah.
a really big way that I like to work and like help people of not like telling people what their answers should be or what works for everyone else, but like helping people find their own answers and their own what's right for each individual. And I know that whatever you decide to call it, just
Yeah.
like supporting people and like yeah.
Well, and like that's what we've talked about. Like, I even said this in Reiki that, like, if I'm doing my job right, I'm working myself out of a job because
Yeah.
you should, the not you should. I don't like to use the word should. We hope the outcome is that you
Yeah.
come back to yourself and that you trust yourself, and that then is your guide, and
Yes.
we're really just like part of the whole system of like getting there, but we're
Yeah.
not the answer. Like, you're the answer for yourself. And
Yeah.
so I feel like I feel like too people say like healing's not linear, which is true. Like you go back and forth and things sometimes, but you said that the grief came like right after.
Oh, like
And I,
immediately. Yeah.
yeah, and I think that's like a testament to, I don't know if you've thought of this, but of just like how much work you have done and how safe you do feel with yourself and trust yourself and where you're at in your life. Because I think the reason why there was a break for me is because I was still in survival. Like
Hmm.
there was no time and there
Yeah.
was no safe way to grieve. And so I don't think it's a coincidence that it came once I was out of my house and in residential. And
Yeah.
I feel like if there was a blueprint, right? And we don't gatekeep here. So if there
For
was a
sure.
blueprint to healing, going back to the Maslow's hierarchy of needs thing, I feel like the work that or the people that you are meant to work with and where you really shine is like getting people to that safety. And then
Where
I'm like,
I specifically?
yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Yeah,
because
sorry,
I
just to
feel I
clarify.
feel like your book was a lot about educating, but it was also about making that point too. Was like and a lot of your verbiage and stuff online is that it's like I'm help you like come back to yourself and I'm just like part of this light that
Yeah.
helps shine that for others and support that and then I'm like yeah and then not and then this is not a sales pitch but it's gonna maybe sound like it but it's like and then when people feel safe then they can start learning about their real authentic selves and then like that's the next stage because that's how it was for me. It
Yes.
was survival mode, say I mean I'm simplifying it, but it was like
Yeah.
survival mode, education, safety, actualization.
Yeah.
And so like it's never a competition, but also like the people I'm wanting to work with and like that I'm imagining would resonate with what I'm doing have already gone through what you help people with because I don't even think it's like the same stage of healing, you
Yeah.
know,
Absolutely.
which is
Yeah.
interesting. I just thought of that right now.
Yeah. No, definitely. And I appreciate what you're saying. And yeah, I think I had so many experiences early on in my healing journey of being in a healing container with people who I think genuinely had good intentions, and there being so many things in that that kind of re traumatized me, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever you want to say, in certain ways. And a lot of that was like other people and what the coach and the expert said worked, and what whatever. And then and then kind of after those spaces kind of unwinding, like, oh, okay, so I was actually kind of shamed for being in a
Mm-hmm.
toxic relationship by this spiritual healing container of that I just didn't love myself enough. And instead of kind of helping me realize how to love myself and
Right.
unwind all this developmental stuff, and just my point, without getting fully into all the stories of it, is that I experienced enough in that that was just like me trying to heal, and me feeling like I was just kind of like on this healing, and then like, ooh, knocked down a little bit more. Okay, okay, like,
Yeah.
ooh, this other thing knocks me down a little bit more. And I was affected by all of that to a deep extent, I think, because I am a highly sensitive person, that those things stuck with me. And they stuck with me in the sense of I know that I meant to do this work one day, and I know that when I do, I want to do the opposite of that. I want to
Yeah.
be really tuned in here to like, okay, what did I receive in that moment, and what did I actually need in that moment?
Yeah.
And doing it, speaking to what like I think, or trying to attune to what someone else actually needs in that moment, instead of just my framework,
Yeah.
my belief, my opinion.
Yeah.
And I appreciate what you said about like the frameworks, and I'm realizing about myself, um I'm realizing about myself that I am someone who naturally kind of takes in a lot of different information from over here, from over there, from everywhere, and kind of organizes it to whatever degree that I can, and then creates some sort of like a structure or a framework from it. Um, and like I try to do that in a very balanced way of like I use the metaphor of like walking with someone in the dark who can see in the dark. I
Yeah.
tried to go back and kind of think about, and I talk about this in my book. This is what I talk about so much in my book of like actually taking the time to sit down with myself and go back. And as I'm stepping into wanting to help people and do this type of work, okay, what did I go through? And then what happened after that? And what did I actually need when I was there? And okay, and not in a way of this is the
This is
path.
the
One, two,
formula. Yeah.
three, you have to do it this way, and that, and
Yeah.
there's no room for any personal, unique customization. There's no room for you to say, this doesn't work for me, that doesn't work for me. But how do I kind of guide people who feel like they're in the dark? Oh, okay, when you're in the dark, it actually feels really nice to have someone beside you
Hmm.
who says, okay, and then might be a good next step, and this is probably a good next step. How does that feel for you? Do
Yes.
we need to take this next step a little bit differently or do right, but generally to kind of be that forward move, that safety
Right.
movement forward with and for someone. And so that's how I came up with the idea for my transforming shadows into gold, as I call it,
Yeah.
method, and the 6 stages of that, and the kind of the 5 stages for the empath's healing journey, these things that I present in my book as frameworks, is just like, man, I went through a lot. And I
Yeah.
feel like, you know, those cartoons where like somebody's standing and then they run past them and they're just standing there spinning? I'm like, that was me for like 10 years. Okay, how
Yeah.
do I'm not spinning anymore. How do I help someone who's spinning
Yeah.
know, oh my God, they're so dizzy. Okay, where do I go? Where can I go? And not in this rigid way that everyone else is doing it. And
Yeah.
maybe that'll make me seem like I've been told that that makes me seem like less of an authority and less confident and this and that. And that was part of this like unmasking of just like, oh, no, that's not how I work. And
Yeah.
that doesn't have to be true for me. And someone else can think that about me, and that's okay. And they're not for me, and they don't get me, and that's okay. Because the
Yeah.
people that I'm meant to help will resonate with how I am and how I work. And
Yeah. Because we're not in the business of just like hooking people like and just taking people's money. Like that's not, I don't know, that's not how I
yeah,
operate, nor do I want to. And
yeah.
I know I've followed people who've built up this huge business on
Mm,
working with others to then like literally take down their whole page and start over. And then people are
yeah.
like, which is not to say that you can't ever shift or change or transform, but then people are like, well, was what you were doing before even like real then? Like if you're basically like kind of denouncing all of that now, like it makes you seem
Huh.
not authentic. And I don't want to build something up for success. I genuinely, like you said, I didn't know as a child like you did, but you know,
Yeah.
once I could see a little bit past the veil of survival mode, because I think I've had times in the last 15 years that I've been like a little more out of survival mode than others. And once I could see a little bit, I was like, well, yeah, this is like I wish I had someone like me back
Mm-hmm.
then.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like now with social media and the internet and stuff, we can reach a lot more people, which is great. Like before, it was just like you hope you maybe find a guru and like like you just naturally the universe aligns you with this person. It just comes out of nowhere, and that doesn't happen for everyone. But I feel like since I've discovered that, like, yeah, I do want to help other people because if what I've been through could be even slightly less horrific and miserable for somebody else,
Yeah.
then that's I want to help people with that. And honest, I'm going to be really honest right now. Unfortunately, we live in a world where money matters, and if we
Yeah.
lived back in the day where like I exchange what I do for like
Yeah.
fucking bread, I would, but that's just
Yeah.
not how how
Yeah.
it works anymore. So it's like by nature, like yeah, I need to get paid, and we should be fairly compensated for our time and our energy. That's true. But
Yeah.
I'm like, if I could just live my life doing exchanges with people, I would. It's not about money. Like I just need that, unfortunately, to survive in the way that this matrix is set up.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Also, you touched on something too earlier about where you're like, oh, you have all these things and you should put it into like one big thing so everyone like
Mm.
pays more
Oh
and
yeah,
does
it's
all the
like
thing.
writing.
I had like a thought today because I was like, yeah, so I'm doing, I'm not getting paid for this, but we're doing the podcast stuff together.
Right.
I'm working on like making clothes and the custom like mystic armor stuff. And I'm starting like my first like really well, I've already started it, but I'm doing my first like really big jacket. I'm super excited.
Cool.
So I'm doing that because that fills my special interests. And then I'm like, no, I want to help people, and whether that's through Reiki or like the unmasking support or whatever, I want to do that. And then I had that thought. I'm like, Sarah, maybe you should just like stick to one thing. And then I was like, immediately after, I was like, whoa, where did that voice come from? Because that's not me. Like,
Uh-huh.
and then I was like, I literally can't do that. I have so many like I think are cool special interests and so many passions that there's no fucking way I could stick to one thing. And that sounds really boring, actually. I don't want to do that. And people who want to work with me with unmasking may or may not want a cool mystic armor jacket. But I'm not gonna be like, okay, guys, so this is what I do, and if you sign up, now you'll get a mystic armor clothing item and then
Right.
also a free Reiki session and
Link
like
them
that's
all. Yeah.
I look like a lunatic. Like
Yeah.
that's not gonna way it's gonna work for me.
When you said that, I got the like social media thing that people were doing of like we're neurodivergent. We and the one that
Yeah,
came for me is like we're neurodivergent. We can't just have one hobby or
no,
interest.
literally. We should when you come out here, we should make one of those.
I'm down.